is Charlotte. My name is Charlotte Pate. I'm Farmer Support Coordinator with ASAN. So glad that you could join today. If you're just tuning in, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. So glad to have you here. We're also glad to have you here. I'm just going to switch to some community agreements that we have, and then I'm going to take it off of screen share. And if you don't know where the chat is that little speech bubble at the bottom. You can see on the slide that it lets you know with that red arrow. All right, these are some community agreements that ASAN members came up with in the past for our virtual space. You can just take a look at them. I'm not going to read through them so that we can get to our workshop, but if you just want to take a mental note of these, maybe look at one in particular, think about it for a moment, and then I'll take this off of screen share and we can get started. Great, wonderful. Okay, welcome everybody. So excited that you're here. Today we're going to be joined by Judith, Billy, and Lupe. And we're so excited to be talking about collective land ownership today. Just some housekeeping. Alice, if Alice, you could give a wave of your hand. Alice is our director of ASAN, and she's going to be on tech today. So if you have any tech questions, feel free to reach out to her. You can message her using that chat box, or just wave your hand and she'll know that something's up, and so she can help you. Thank you so much, Alice. Also, since we have 3 amazing speakers today, we're going to have less time for community discussion than we previously thought. But there will be time for questions. And if you are interested in having a full craft session that's devoted to having a community conversation around collective land ownership, that's totally possible. And we're in the process of visioning what the rest of the year will look like for craft. So we're going to do a little show of hands at the end of this session to gauge interest for that. Also, if you could just please save your questions for the end. We'll have 2 different sections of questions, times for questions. So know that there will be time for questions, but if you could just remember to save them for the end so that we can answer as many questions as possible. Great. So if you're not familiar with ASAN, the Alabama Sustainable Agriculture Network, is a grassroots network of sustainable farmers and others who support a more resilient food system, agricultural system in Alabama. And we do that through programs like CRAFT, which stands for the Collaborative Regional Alliance for Farmer Training, and our annual Food and Farm Forum. We're a membership organization, and we'd love to have you join as members. So Alice is going to drop that link in the chat. Today's workshop is free. Our workshops are free. And we do that through being a strong membership organization. Great. Well, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Katie Willis and pass it off to her. Katie is on our craft steering committee, and we're just so lucky to have her as a farmer leader. So Katie, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Welcome to everybody. I'm so glad that everybody could be here tonight. And it looks like we have folks that are coming in from across the South, not just Alabama, which is really exciting. Like Charlotte said, my name's Katie. I'm the assistant farm manager at Jones Valley Teaching Farm, and I think that this is my 2nd year as a steering committee member for CRAFT. CRAFT started in Central Alabama in 2019 and expanded to a statewide program last year. Built on a long history of farmer-led on-farmer training and social networking, CRAFT is led by a 17-person steering committee that includes farm owners and operators, as well as farm interns, apprentices, employees, and aspiring farmers. And these are the folks that designed the lineup for the year. So if there are committee members in the audience, you can raise your hand if you want. Thanks for all your hard work. We're bringing to an end our first full year as a statewide network, but we have another virtual workshop next week on farmer record keeping, and that's going to be on Tuesday from 5:30 to 7. And then we'll wrap up the craft year with an electric fence workshop that's going to be in person on February 26th from 2 to 5 p.m. in Gurley, Alabama. And you can get more information on that on ASAN's social media. And if you're interested in being on the craft steering committee, you can just reach out to Charlotte. I think that our first meeting is February 16th at 5 o'clock, 5 to 7:30. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it about craft. To get us started, we want you to answer a question in the chat. Just like, what is your interest in collective land ownership? What brings you to the workshop tonight? Charlotte, do you want me to read some of these?
Oh, I was just going to hop in and we can maybe pinball back and forth. I see one that's would love to learn about the legalities of splitting land with people and the various ways to do that. Great.
I can grab my phone.
Want to learn how we can further the possibility of collective land in Southeast Tennessee, plus my own future personal interest.
Awesome.
I think we're good. They're texting what's happening.
Vernon said, anything promoting sustainable agriculture and collaboration interests me. I like to hear that, Vernon.
And Nina says starting a homestead in Blount County and want to do it with other people. Hi, Nina.
Jay said, I've always had an interest in farming and agriculture, but being very busy, I've had trouble really getting started. Would love to become more involved and learn more from local farmers. Curious to know the ins and outs of collective land ownership. Don't know much about it. That's awesome. So glad you're here.
And Gabriel, who is a farmer and craft steering committee member, says that he's interested in co-ops for housing and intentional communities.
Cool. M says that they want to learn more about the legalities because it already sounds dreamy in my head. I like that. Yeah, bringing that like dream into reality. Maybe we'll just get a couple more. This is really helpful to hear.
Heather says, I'm hoping to hear more about what farmers need when seeking land, what benefits can be found from collective ownership, and what might create more interest for current landowners to open their own properties up to collective land ownership.
Sick. All right, y'all. If you keep thinking about those, feel free to drop them in the chat so everyone can see. I'll just pass it back to you, Katie, and then we can keep rolling.
Yeah, and I'll pass it over to Judith Winfrey of Love Was Love Farm, which is a farm just outside of Atlanta, and we're so excited and honored to have you here with us tonight. So I'll just pass it to you now.
Thanks, y'all. Hi. I'm so happy to be here. I am a big fan of ASAN and Alice and Alabama in general. My husband and I just took a little vacation that took us through Alabama, and we stopped in Montgomery and spent the night there and went to the EJI monument there, and just stumbled into a great restaurant and a great bar. And I said to my husband, like, Alabama is just a vibe. It is such a vibe, and I love it. So I'm happy to be here with y'all today. I'm I'm going to try to cover the high notes and give you some background on our farm and how we got to where we are and lessons learned along the way. And it's kind of a big ball of yarn. So I'm going to try to be somewhat orderly about the way I share all of this with you. But if you get lost, there'll be some time for questions in the end. My husband, Joe, and I started farming. We worked as landless farmers for the first 15 years of our farming career. We have always been a certified, or not always been certified, but always been an organic farm, mostly produce and vegetables. Over the course of the time that we farmed just together, we were on 2 different land arrangements. The first was on private land that belonged to some retired farmers. That's where we started. That farm had almost all of the infrastructure that we needed to start a farm, which was a great place to learn how to run your own farm business. We learned a lot of lessons in the 2.5 years that we were farming there. Then we moved to private land that was collectively owned by a co-housing community in Atlanta. And we were there for 11 years. That farm also had all of the infrastructure that was needed to operate a farm. And when I say infrastructure, I'm assuming that most everybody knows what I mean, but just in case, I'll say like there was a tractor and there was a well and there was water and the land was cleared and there was a greenhouse on both of these farms. And then most recently, we are starting our second year at our own farm, which is about 45 minutes east of Atlanta. And this is a farm that we collectively own with 3 other growers. We formed a worker-owned cooperative to collectively hold this land. And I'll talk a little bit about that process and how we came to some of the decisions that we came to. But I thought, for me at least, it's helpful if we just sort of go chronologically, and I'll just sort of paint a picture for you of like who we were when we started as farmers, and how we've ended up where we've ended up. So in 2007, when we were approached to own this, to help operate this farm, on the land that belonged to the retired farmers. We had never run our own farm business before. We were young and ambitious and full of optimism and thought we were going to do it all. And I mean, when I say we thought we were going to do it all, like we were going to have an orchard and we were going to do heritage breeds of animals and we were going to do only heirloom vegetables, like the whole thing. We were quite naive, not just from the perspective of we were going to be able to do all of that stuff, but also from the perspective of having never really owned a business and having never really had formal business agreements with landlords or other people. I think we probably put too much faith and trust in handshakes, and we'd never had a lease in place. We were unable to ever get a lease, which is one of the reasons that we ended up moving. And it was a really painful process to go through trying to negotiate that lease while we were in the midst of running this farm business. And we also, part of our naivete, these farmers lived on the farm where we were farming. And I think we put like a little too much credo in their opinions of us. Like we really wanted them to like us and approve of what we were doing. We wanted to show them what great farmers we were. And we got caught up in a lot of that and expended more emotion than we needed to and trying to make sure that they were happy with what we were doing. And I think we also underutilized some of their expertise and experience by not asking them technical questions that were more related to the specifics of running a farm and a farm business. So, some of the high level lessons that I think we learned in that experience were around making sure absolutely you have the nuts and bolts of your agreement in place before you start farming on the land, because once you start farming on the land, everything shifts and you go in with a ton of optimism. You think it's going to be great. And once, disagreements or conflicts come up, if you haven't contemplated how you're going to get out of disagreements and conflicts, it's much harder to do. And if you're landless, you essentially have no power, you have no legal standing. So we learned a lot about our own naivete. We learned that you can't do it all, that you really have to pick and choose what you want to do as a farm. And we learned, that you can only do your best, and you can't worry so much about pleasing all of the constituents. And I bring up all of these lessons because all of these lessons are lessons that we have been able to apply in the next two farming scenarios that we found ourselves in. Another lesson that I've learned from that farm that's come to me sort of in hindsight is a lesson around empathy and around being aware of the life stages of the other people that are a part of your collective. If you think of this first farm with the retired farmers as our first experience in collective farming, we never would have said that that was what it was, but in this essence, it is what it was. And I used to make this joke when I was there and we were young and naive and full of zest and thought we were going to do it all right. I made this joke that it's like my husband and I were marrying the child of these older farmers, and we were there having raucous sex with their daughter all the time, and they couldn't handle it. It really stressed them out, right? And in some ways, I think that's true in the sense that we were intruding on a very deep relationship, a very important relationship that they had, and we weren't as respectful as we probably could have been or should have been. And they were offended, and it was hard for them to let go of it. And I hope that analogy didn't offend anybody. But I think it's important to think about, farming is a relationship with the land, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to bring a respect for that, especially in collective farming. And I think that may be one of the biggest challenges in collective farming is that everybody wants to have their own relationship with the land, and you have to make space for that. So we weren't able to work out a lease at that first place. It ended with a lot of disappointment, I think probably on both sides, and frustration and heartache and a massive flood, which for me was a freeing moment. I was like, okay, we're done here. There's no topsoil. But I think my husband did stay and rebuild the farm for a year, and I went to work off farm. And then we left that farm and we went to a better situation. And I say it was a better situation because it was an existing co-housing community that had set aside land to be farmed inside the city of Atlanta. They had spent a lot of time thinking about the legalities and how to put agreements in place that honored the 75 homeowners that collectively owned this land, and how to make decisions and how to honor the farmer who was going to be the caretaker of the land. It was a place that honored farmers and honored people who steward the land. And it was a great place for us to go to learn and observe the infrastructure of collective decision making, and to watch how that becomes administered. And I think some of the lessons that we learned from being at that place, we were at that place for 11 years. Some of the lessons that we learned there were, that you have to be patient, that collectives by definition move much more slowly than some of us are accustomed to moving. We also learned, not to take any one opinion too seriously. We were farming this land where there were 75 owners who would walk in and on and around the farm, and some of them had varying, very strong opinions about things that were sometimes in conflict. So we were constantly just having to say, like, okay, that's an opinion. Okay, that's an opinion. But until decisions are made, you can't, in a collective, you can't do anything except observe other people's opinions. I hope that makes sense. I'll give you an example that we always enjoyed laughing about. When we were at the first farm, one of the sources of tension was cutting the grass. Like, we could never cut the grass enough for this old farmer that we were farming on. And we were constantly getting, scolded for letting the grass get too high. And we get to this new farm, and we're, again, trying so hard to be great tenants and stewards. And my husband goes and cuts the grass, and one of the very first things that happens is he gets scolded for messing up the bird habitat by cutting the grass. and we're just like, okay, so everybody has opinions, and they really differ, and you can't take any of it too seriously. All you can do is your best, and be thoughtful, and give space, and be patient, and learn the lessons you can learn as you move forward. And I could give you a lot more examples, but I want to get into the nuts and bolts of what we're doing now, because I think that's probably the piece that is the most interesting. At least it is to me, because it's current. And I think we're so lucky, my husband and I, that we were able to build on this 15-year history of farming collectively, landlessly, in community, because we have learned so many important things. Mostly, like, if you had to boil it down to one thing, it's mostly about detaching from your ego and just moving from a place of peace and respect when it comes to others. So we tried to get a long-term lease at the co-housing community, and we were never able to do that, which led us on a sort of like a journey into our hearts to decide what we really wanted to do. And we knew that we wanted to have sort of a forever farm, and a lot of different things happened simultaneously, but one of the important things that happened was this organization called the Conservation Fund started to pilot, after years and years and years of conversation, started to pilot a fund called the Working Farms Fund. And this was a fund intended to get farmers with a working history onto farmland that they could own and do it affordably. So we were excited about this program. And we also sort of simultaneously, my husband had realized, like, he didn't want to farm in a silo. Like, he wanted to farm in community. He enjoyed his collaborations with other farms. He enjoyed all of the young people that had worked with him on farms along the way. And so we started to think about, how can we how can we have a farm that's not just our farm, but a farm that belongs to many others? And so we joined forces with a young man who had worked with us at Love is Love at Gaia Gardens, which is the co-housing community. And we also started to have conversations with another couple who was a sort of badass farmers who had worked on lots of great projects, starting farms and larger farms around Atlanta and beyond. We had never worked with them, but we knew them socially and knew that they were interested in starting their own farm. So we just started to have conversations with them. And a long story short, those conversations led to the notion of this worker-owned cooperative. Could we become a worker-owned cooperative? And so we took sort of the customer base and a lot of the business model from Love is Love Farm and converted the legal structure into Love is Love Cooperative Farm. And we did that with the help of an organization in Georgia called the Georgia Cooperative Development Center. They answered many questions and put us in touch with many legal experts, accounting experts to help us, work through the technicalities and the nuts and bolts. We worked on a plan for this project for almost 2 years before getting on to an actual farm. So everybody was doing their other farm jobs and we were meeting semi-regularly. We took a small business development center business plan and just delegated chunks of it to individuals within our group and started to put together our business plan. We identified a farm that we wanted that was going to be a turnkey farm. We were going to just get on there. Another farmer was retiring and that fell through. So that was probably one of the first hardships that we went through as a group. And then we had to go back and identify a new piece of land. And we did, and it required some huge changes to our business plan because we were no longer jumping into a turnkey operation. We had to build the barns and the greenhouses and get the equipment and do all of the things. Dig a well. Digging a well was the first thing we did. So it was somewhere along the line, once we realized that we weren't going to have the first farm that we wanted, we were revising the business plan. We realized we were going to need a lot more money than we thought we would originally. We started to do this because we were a co-op, and the Cooperative Development Center had put this idea in our heads that we could fundraise within the state of Georgia using this SEC deregulation that happened in 2012 that is national. I'm not sure if the exact same law exists in Alabama, but I'm sure something similar exists. We were able to basically go to our CSA and community members around Atlanta and raise the capital that we needed rather than going to the USDA or a traditional bank. And that was really, really great for us because one of the challenges with this Working Farms Fund, as great as it is, it doesn't allow us to have any collateral up front because we don't own the land right out. We're renting it for 5 years from the conservation fund with an option to purchase at the 5th year. So if we didn't put up our our personal assets, we wouldn't have been able to raise the money that we needed to build the barn and dig the well. And well, we didn't have to dig the well. The conservation fund dug the well for us, but to build the greenhouses and, lay the gravel and all of the things that we had to do to actually make the farm work. I have so much more to say about this, and I know that I am over my time. I think the things that I want y'all to take away I'm now we're 3 years into the collective, 2 years on the farm. The planning was great. That was a great, spending a lot of time and getting really, really granular on the planning, getting everything on paper has really served us well. Having the money that we need to actually build the farm has eliminated so much potential stress. I don't know that it would be possible to do what we're doing if we were also worried about making payroll or, servicing our debts, our tractor debt. Rolling into an established business model. So like taking the customer base from Love is Love Farm and the CSA members from Love is Love Farm and the wholesale customers from Love is Love Farm was really great. Overall, I want to say Farming and Collective is amazing. It is not without its challenges. It is not always easy to let go and to yield when someone has a stronger opinion than you, or even when you have a stronger opinion than someone else. But it's just so wonderful to have other people to bear the responsibility with you and to help share in the rewards and the challenges. One of my favorite days last year was a day that my husband and I were at the farmer's market selling plants. We had a great plant sale. Everybody knows a farmer's market feels great when it's great. And we were getting texts from the other worker owners who were at the farm. Demetrius fixed the well. Russell fixed the deer fence. Monica fixed something in the greenhouse. And I was just like, wow, it feels better than a great market? A great market knowing that you're coming back to not having all this other shit you got to do at the end of the market. So I'm going to leave it there because I've already run into your time, Billy. I'm sorry. We can't hear you, Billy.
Oh, I wasn't sure if there was another. I'm so glad, Judith, you can always take all the time. Y'all should know that Judith and we've had a chance to work together a bunch over the years. But I moved to Georgia 15 years ago to work at a residential psychiatric hospital for kids. And so 14 years and like 9 months ago, I showed up on Judith's farm and said, I have 15 teenage boys who don't like me. I don't know anything about farming. I'd like to bring them to your farm 2 days a week. And Judith didn't know me and said yes. And it's been a pretty good relationship ever since. Lots of ups and downs. I'll give an abbreviated pitch, put some links in the chat box so that we will have time for conversation, in particular, more questions for Judith at the end. My name is Billy Mitchell. It's really good to see some familiar faces. There's one person who looks real familiar, but I feel like you grew maybe a beard since the last time I saw you 3 years ago at the ASAN conference. And I used to work for the Working Farms Fund, working with farms like Love is Love to help get them onto new land, transition, and then kind of make the relationships that new land sometimes needs, be it like NRCS, FSA, Extension, other farmers. And then I'm currently part of a brand new USDA program called TOP, Transition to Organic Partnership Program, that's working to help growers either stay certified organic, transition to become certified organic, or just transition practices. And I'll put links in for both the Working Farms Fund and that new program. So if y'all have questions or advice, we are like really building it right now. It's funded for 5 years. It's very exciting. We could use your input. But I guess I just want to talk real quickly a little bit about kind of maybe the overlap between like land access, organic certification, and then we're going to hear a little bit from NRCS later on today. And one thing is that as Working Farms Fund, as we go out approaching landowners to make these opportunities to purchase land so that we can help move farmers onto it, there are a lot of landowners who are very interested in the land staying in farming and wanting to hear words like, we do sustainable farming, we do organic practices. There are people who are interested in selling their land, sometimes not even at market rates, if they know that that land is going to be conserved and they know that it's going to stay in farming. There's so much concern, and I know I'm just preaching to the choir, but in rural areas and in peri-urban areas of land no longer being farmland. And so we really work with farmers and landowners who care about those things, about land access. And I would say that they're like, somebody had put in the chat box, like, what do farmers need to make this work? And I'll just do two really high level things. One, what have we seen through, we've got now 10 farms in the Working Farms Fund program. What do farmers need is two things really. The first one is like a strong community. I mean, this is collective farming, like the collective that Love is Love, the cooperative they started. But also it's very much a community-based farming where it takes a lot of different organizations to make it work. It takes the land access organizations, it takes NRCS, it takes groups like ASAN, but most importantly, it takes those informal farmer networks. Almost all the farmers that are part of the Working Farms Fund, all these farms that have moved onto new land, almost all of them already knew each other, and they're always in conversation with each other, but then in conversation with us to improve these programs. But if you have been just farming on your own, making it work, like Judith said, you know, maybe siloed as a farmer, this is a really good time to start practicing working with other people, because we all know that we want collaboration and community, and we also know how hard those things can be. You know, we can go fast on our own, or we can go further together. So that first thing that we've seen with the farmers who've been successful in getting into this new land is that they have a sense of community, and they're working with multiple organizations, and they have a really strong informal farmer network. They're working with different farmers. So probably like a lot of y'all, they're always on the phone with somebody else, texting with somebody else. They've got those good like Bluetooth that can get a little dirty in the tractor, always talking with each other. The second thing that for at least the Working Farms Fund, for other land access programs, is that planning piece that Judith talked about. And in particular, like, we are looking for farms that are sustainably minded, as in sustainable practices, but also financial sustainability. And often that means paperwork, like figuring out what records you need to keep so that you can access the capital, so that you can show people that if you are put onto this new land, that we're not going to make you land rich, but cash poor. Like, the last thing anybody wants to see is that this new land doesn't set a farm up for success. And so a lot of the land access programs, but also NRCS, NOP, if you're getting certified organic, they're looking for a little bit of paperwork. And if you've just like never kept records before, there's like three things that I would just suggest doing. Is like, one, like truly start a farm journal. Most record keeping is really just like a farm journal, just taking 10 minutes a day to start writing down what you do. Develop record keeping sheets that are just specific to your farm. Just identify like those 5 things on your farm where records really might make a difference, and then start compiling daily notes, because once you start farming collectively, that little bit of note keeping is going to be so helpful, because you're going to be able to share with each other what's been going on. You know, Judith was at market while somebody else was in the greenhouse. But that type of communication we've seen has been so important for the farms in our program to be able to get onto the land and then continue to work with each other. And it was really important for us to see some type of level of paperwork, because most of the farms that we're with are getting onto new land and they're expanding their business. And so we just want to make sure that those sustainable farming practices, taking care of the soil, taking care of our community, but also those sustainable business practices are there. And if you've never done it before, I would just like encourage you to maybe access what I would call some lower risk programs, like apply for an NRCS pollinator program, which almost nobody is ever applying for. Like, put in an acre of flowers for bees, just try it out, get your farm number, see what it's like to interact with these agencies and build those relationships. Because not only do they have access to all the formal programming, but these are also the people who often tend to know like somebody's cousin or somebody's friend who has access to 40 acres to 60 acres, and they're happy to make a deal. They want to find a way to keep that land in agriculture. And maybe the last thing, I just saw somebody ask about selecting land, and Judith brought up 2 great things. Is when you're selecting land, access to water, wells for most of our farms have been a pretty big barrier. And the Working Farms Fund has been able to financially support people to put in wells, but not having water is a huge issue. And then fencing. At least one of our farms, to be successful, their first month had to put up 10 acres or fencing around 10 acres. And so that's a significant cost too. So really thinking about what are the trade-offs and what do you like to do, DIY or not DIY? That was kind of the speed dating pitch. I'll put a couple links in and then I'll be here for more questions, and I'll be working in the Southeast for at least the next 5 years. So let's stay in conversation.
Great. Thanks, Billy. And thanks, Judith. Big round of applause. Thank you. We have time for 2 to 3 questions, so you can drop them in the chat and we'll roll from there. Thanks, Billy, for putting those links in there. Really helpful. Okay. Gabriel asked, how would you define a cooperative farm? I'm curious to hear that from both of you.
Billy, do you want to go first? You want me to go?
I'll let you go first. Do you want to give the legal definition, how y'all actually are like cooperative with a capital C?
Yeah. It's a complicated question, Gabriel. There are lots of different kinds of co-ops, I think is worth mentioning. And I think in the food and ag space, there's 2 kinds of co-ops, like marketing co-ops you see more often. A great example of a marketing co-op is Organic Valley. The milk producer is actually a marketing co-op. And there are consumer co-ops. So like most medium to large towns have a health food store that is probably also a consumer co-op. The kind of co-op we are is a worker-owned cooperative. That co-op structure is not actually a legally existing structure in the state of Georgia. So we incorporate, and we didn't want to incorporate in another state. So we incorporated in Georgia and we embedded cooperative principles into our bylaws. So that was sort of our workaround. A worker-owned cooperative means that all of the owners are all of the people who want to become owners work at the farm. There's a process for people to become for our employees to become owners. We haven't actually gone through that process yet, but we're hoping to in the next couple of years. There are guiding principles for all co-ops. There are 7 sort of foundational principles for co-ops. I'm not going to remember all of them off the top of my head, but some of them are free and democratic governance. Membership is accessible to all. Cooperating with other cooperatives, consideration for the community around you are some examples. There's a lot of other different kinds of cooperatives. It's a pretty deep topic. So I'm not an authority, and I'm not going to go into too much more detail. What you got, Billy?
I would just add, Gabriel, but for everybody, I had the opportunity to work for the National Farmers Union for 4 years. And so I could travel around the country and got to spend a lot of time with people who are farming cooperatively, and I'll say lower C cooperatively. They had made an intentional choice to work together. And there's a couple consistent themes. One is meetings. People just like, you have to accept we are going to meet together and we're going to talk it out. And the other one was figuring out what your guiding principles are. Like if we're going to farm cooperatively, what does that actually mean for us? And so just like Judith mentioned, they spend a ton of time planning. What I've seen for cooperatives, either lower or capital C cooperatives, is this planning and this like meeting together, but this intentionality, and that time up front really does pay off for the groups in the long run, but it's a slower process.
Great, thanks. Any more questions? We'll have some time later. Yes, thank you so much. Thanks, y'all. Well, with that, maybe we can just give another round of applause. Thank you all both. Thank you.
Hey,
And
Charlotte, there was a quick question in
Oh,
the chat from
I
Holt.
missed it.
And Holt, I don't know if, yeah, I think you probably meant that for right now. So did you see that, Charlotte? You want me to read it to you?
Yeah, if you could read it to me, I can't see it.
Okay, yeah, just can we run through the options again of how to buy land with others to the extent that there is experience? I'm thinking of conventional loan with a joint mortgage, creating a company or workers co-op and then buying land as a business, and creating an agreement with a land trust or a land conservancy to lease or lease to own or buy.
I think high level, you can do it any way you want to do it, as long as you're willing to put in the time to have the discussions with the people that you want to buy the land with. You're going to need a lawyer. You probably want an accountant. Those things are not as expensive as you think they might be, and it's going to help protect you in the long run. You know, it's a process. It's not a short process to buy farmland in the first place. And then to do it in community and in collaboration is even a longer process. So I would say, you know, get your own financial records in shape and be ready to have a conversation with the people that you want in your collective about their financial records and making sure that they're in shape. If you're going to go to a bank and apply for a joint mortgage, not only are you going to need legal documents in place, you're going to need to prove that you're worthy of the loan. And the only way you can do that is with your financial records. And these are not questions that we're used to, or not conversations that we're used to having with people, but it is the nuts and bolts of doing it. And it's a broad question that's asked, and I don't think I've delved into all of it, but hopefully that at least gives you a direction to move in. Get your financial records in order, get a lawyer, get an accountant, and get ready to have those conversations with other people a lot.
Great, thank you. Billy, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think Holt, you've really hit on the three classic ways to do it. And there's also just like going to a bank might be faster. FSA might be a little bit slower, but there's a better interest rate. A conservation group will probably be even slower, but possibly even a better rate. And also, so it's really just balancing a bunch of things. And I hate to be on like any type of webinar and be like farmer, accountant, record keeping, but it really is a meaningful piece of the collective land ownership, at least in the situation that we find ourselves. And once you get into such a big thing with so many people, sometimes just writing some stuff down really helps, even if you've always just been a handshake operation business.
Well, and I mean, take it from me and my past experience, like things that you don't expect to go wrong may go wrong. And you also need to be asking yourself, like, what is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to lose? What are you willing to walk away from? What are you not willing to lose? And what are you not willing to walk away from? That was a big piece for us of our community capital raise. Was I didn't want to put my personal house on the line to make this farm happen, because it wasn't that I wasn't sure that we could do it or that we all wanted to do it. There's just a lot of uncertainty in farming. There's a lot of uncertainty in working with other people. I had already been a part of a business that had closed, and I was like, I'm not going to personally guarantee this loan. I'm not doing it. So and other people might. I'm not saying I'm right and that's wrong to personally guarantee it, but you need to think through that and be ready to have that conversation potentially with your life partner about what you're willing to risk and not risk.
Great, thanks. We have one more question from Nina for Judith. Has there ever been a time where you felt like giving up? what got you all through it? What got you or y'all through it? What's some of the biggest challenges you faced? And then just as a follow-up, or if you have any conflict mediation techniques that you can share, that'd be awesome.
Thanks for asking that question, Nina, because I didn't get to the what I would have done differently if I could go back. I am really proud of our group. I think we did a lot right. It's a great group of humans. And we're lucky in that regard, that everyone's committed to the project and everyone's committed to having a peaceful working relationship. And that's not to say that there isn't conflict from time to time. And I think, studying and reading about nonviolent communication is a really helpful tool for everybody everywhere, but especially if you're going to be doing things in collaboration and in community. We haven't involved a facilitator for conversations, but we've considered it as a way to sort of work through and maybe debrief on what has worked well and what hasn't worked well. If I could go back in time, I would have spent more time in the planning phase with some softer relationship building stuff. I would have said I would have insisted that we spend more time not just working on the business, but working on our interpersonal relationships. I didn't, because everybody was real excited about the business plan and making the farm happen. And it felt like, I don't know, I felt like a goober. I was like, but guys, let's take a personality test. And I did a little bit of that, but I wish I had done a whole lot more, because I think some of us had never worked together before. And I think it really would have helped us understand more about one another, about what our motivations were, what triggers us. All of those things are things you have to think about and be willing to work through. Being in business with somebody is not, in some ways, is not that different than being married to them. Like you really have to accept the whole person and be willing to work through their flaws and failures as well as their triumphs. So, building interpersonal relationships is something I would have done more of.
Thanks, Judith. Thanks so much, Billy, too. We're going to go ahead and pass off to Lupe, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So I'll pass it to you, Lupe. Thanks again, Judith and Billy.
Okay, thank you. Let me make sure I have a little PowerPoint I wanted to go over, and it helps simplify and kind of break down the programs that I wanted to speak to y'all about this evening. Let me make sure and get my screen shared. Bear with me. Did it come up? Okay, very good. Okay, so I just wanted to, first of all, I wanted to thank every of the panel, but also thank you, Charlotte and Katie, for inviting me. This is a great opportunity to reach out to the community. I'm a big believer in outreach and basically letting people know what all we do. So my name is Guadalupe Kirby, and I help rural communities reach their potential by providing financial assistance through USDA rural development. My goal is to work through partnerships to enable communities to become sustainable, to grow and to prosper according to their base strategic plans. On this evening, on behalf of USDA Rural Development, I'll be giving a brief description of 3 key programs that USDA Rural Development offers, in hopes that you find the information useful and relevant. To start, I would like to provide you with a little background of USDA Rural Development. Now, a lot of people don't know about USDA rural development. They see USDA and they immediately think of meat. They think of poultry. We do not look at any meat or any poultry. That is not what we do. We lend money through rural development. We lend to individuals, municipalities, nonprofits, federal recognized tribes. USDA operates over 50 financial assistance programs for a variety of rural applications. So rural development is committed to helping improve the economy and quality of life in rural America. That is our mission. We provide loans, grants, and loan guarantees that support essential services such as housing, economic development, healthcare, first responder services and equipment, water and electric and telecommunications infrastructure. Now, I like to be upfront. Dealing with the government is a process. There is a lot of paperwork, which we are very happy and will gladly help fill out applications. It just takes a little longer to do, but at the very end, it usually is the best rate and terms you can get out there. You may not feel comfortable or, too comfy to get with the government. It is the government, but you'll be working in the Cullman area office with myself, Philip Cross, which is an area loan specialist. I have Shanda Shaw, an area loan specialist, and Sandy Spurgeon, which is a loan technician here in the Cullman area office. And we will not only get you to the hurdle, but we'll help you push you through it and get over the hurdle. With all of our programs, we always look at repayment ability first before any grant funds are considered. There are many variables to consider when grant funds are in play. One of the main one is the median household income of the service area, for example. Grant funds are hard to get because we compete statewide for grant funds. And projects down south in persistent poverty or the Black Belt areas, they tend to get extra points for those reasons. So it's just something to keep in mind when you look at our programs. Now, I would like to start with the Value-Added Producer Grant Program. The purpose of the Value-Added Producer Grant is to help agriculture producers enter value-added activities related to processing and/or marketing of new products. Now, this is a one-to-one grant. This means you need a cash and/or in-kind contribution of the total grant amount request. So, for example, if you apply for a grant request of $50,000, you need $50,000 in cash or in-kind contributions, and the in-kind can include valued inventory of raw commodity to the project. The goal of the program is to generate new products, create and expand marketing opportunities, and increase producer income. Who is eligible? The independent producers, agriculture producer groups, farmer or rancher cooperatives, majority controlled producer-based business ventures. All these are eligible entities for the program. And how can you use the funds? Well, grant and matching funds can be used for planning activities and working capital expenses related to producing and marketing value-added products. For example, of planning activities include conducting feasible studies or developing business plans. Examples of working capital include processing costs, marketing, and advertising expenses. Some inventory and salary expenses can be included as well for the working capital expenses. Now, here is a screenshot of our program website. And when you go to our website, you'll be able to look at the specific program. It lets you know whether the window is open or closed for application. In this case, currently the Value-Added Producer Grant is closed. You can get a copy of the Federal Registered Notice on our website, which I kind of point, you can see the arrows in yellow. The two things is the fact sheet, which helps you tell, it's the simple 5 W's of who, what, when, where, telling you about the program in a nutshell. And then, of course, the Federal Register notice. Whenever it is posted and it comes out, then that's normally when the window opens and the Register lets you know how you can apply and where to submit your application. The value-added producer grant is administered at the state office in Montgomery. Some of the key points that I do want to mention on with this program is that grants are awarded through a national competition. Each fiscal year, applications are submitted and processed at the state office. And so we encourage you to contact your local office if you don't have the Montgomery, just to get that information, and we can direct you there. So that is the value-added producer grant program. Now I'd like to move to the Rural Energy for America program, which is REAP. And of course, the government we love our acronyms. So in this case, this is the REAP program. And this program provides grants and loan guarantees for renewable energy and energy efficiency programs. Now, REAP offers grants and loans to help agriculture producers and small businesses, rural businesses. Grant request of $20,000 or less is considered restricted, and grant request greater than $20,000 is considered unrestricted. And all that means basically there's two separate pots of money allocated for this program. So, you would fall whatever the amount of the project is, that's where it falls in that category. Who is eligible? Eligible applicants are individuals and entities that received 50% or more of their gross income from agriculture production. That includes crops, livestock, agriculture, forestry operations, dairies, etc. Small businesses, as defined by the Small Business Administration, SBA, needs to be located in a rural area or non-metro communities of 50,000 population or less, and privately owned for-profit small businesses. So the program is designed to assist farmers, ranchers, and rural small businesses with renewable energy and energy efficiency improvements. This program provides grants and loan guarantees for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. Grants this year can be up to 40% of the total project cost. Now this fiscal year it changed. It used to be 25%. This fiscal year, 2023, it went up to 40%. And then of course we have the loan guarantees up to 75% of the total eligible project costs. So here I have listed some of the eligibility or eligible energy and efficiency projects. They are available to agriculture producers and rural small businesses for renewable energy systems to make energy efficiency improvements to their operations. So here are just a few listed. As far as renewable energy, here are some that are listed for renewable energy projects. And here we have the website for the REAP program, and currently it is open. So the last application deadline is March 31st of this year, 2023. So just again, I would recommend to look at fact sheet, look at the Federal Register notice to see where to apply and get the information in regards to the deadline. Now the REAP is administered at the local area office. So again, reach out to them so that way, you can get information on this program. Some of the keynotes for REAP is that grants are awarded through a statewide competition. Applications are accepted year-round, and your application will be submitted and processed at the local area office. I just, again, encourage you to contact your local office for more information. And lastly, I would like to speak on single-family housing programs. So here is the income and property eligibility site where you can check to see if the property you're interested in either purchasing or if you have any repairs on a current residence that you own. You need to make sure that it is located in an eligible rural area. with all of our programs, not only does the applicant have to be eligible, but also the project itself has to be located in an eligible rural area. So here we have a screenshot of what our website looks like for the home buyers interested in buying or constructing, building a home. Currently, both we have the direct loan and the guaranteed loan program. Both of them are in open status. And rural development offers home buyers in eligible rural areas 2 great home loan options. One of them is the guaranteed home loan. Under this program, the approved lenders such as banks or credit unions, mortgage companies, they make the loans to low and moderate income applicants. The loans are guaranteed by USDA Rural Development for 90% of the amount. So in case a homeowner should default, of course, we guarantee the loan. And why we do this is so that the banks, the lenders, we guarantee it reduces their risk, basically. So it makes it possible for lenders to offer loans to applicants who otherwise wouldn't be unable to obtain them. If you don't qualify for a guarantee loan, you may be eligible for the direct loan assistance. So this program helps low and very low income applicants to buy or build their home with payment assistance. Payment assistance is a type of subsidy that reduces the mortgage payment for a short time. Applicants must meet income and other requirements to be eligible for the direct home loan assistance. The home to be purchased must be in an eligible area. And of course, we always look forward to making, having people achieve their dream of becoming homeowners. Here we have for homeowners that currently own their homes is a program that Rural Development offers. If you need to repair your home, do some small repairs, it can be either a loan or a grant. This again, it is an open status, and you can get the fact sheet from the website. To qualify, you must be the homeowner and occupy the house as your primary residence. It must be, you must not be able to get any credit elsewhere. The household income should not exceed the limit to very low income by county. So when you call your local office and inquire about this loan and grant repair program, first thing they'll ask you is, where is the property located, what county, because it does determine that's a determining factor of the amount of income and the median household income. And again, the grants, it could be eligible, 62 or older can be eligible for the grant portion of this. And not be able to repay the loan. Okay, so here I'm not going to read all this to you, but I wanted to just do like a quick overview of the 504 program. I highly encourage you to contact your local USDA office for more information. In a nutshell, it's basically, as far as the maximum loan amount is $40,000, the grant amount is $10,000, but it could be a combination of $50,000 for the loan home repair. A couple of things that I'd like to point out, I'm getting close to the end of my slide, but a couple of things I did want to point out for the purpose of this audience in tonight's meeting. And one is the size or the general home guidelines of when we look at applications. So modest size is a qualified property that is predominantly used for residential in character and in design, as opposed to commercial or agriculture. And that's one thing that I wanted to point out. So when you apply, you're calling in, you're looking into say you're looking into a home that has like 10 acres. Well, 10 acres, there is a possibility you could subdivide, and that would be a no-no, basically. We do look to the property can't be subdivided, because then the main key feature of this is to be able to provide someone a home, but it can't be income producing. So that's one key factor that I did want to point out. The other key factor is that the property, sometimes you find some homes that can be on land, and there's just be cautious about that it's not income producing buildings. So for example, if you have a barn or silos or greenhouses that are out there, just as the property would be eligible, just as long as it's not primarily for the production of agriculture. So those two things I did want to key in and point out, because that would not make a property eligible. Again, highly encourage you to contact your local USDA office for more information. For the state of Alabama, we do have 8 area offices, and that's in order to serve all 67 counties. The Cullman area office covers northwest, mainly the northwest of Alabama. The counties we serve is Blount, Cullman, Franklin, Jefferson, Marion, St. Clair, Walker, and Winston. I do want to say all of our programs are nationwide. So if you're interested, I know that we had some people here joining us from Tennessee and other southern states, I believe. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call, contact me. I have no problem directing you to your contact in Tennessee, for example. So all of our programs are nationwide, so they apply to every state. So this concludes my presentation, and here is my contact information. But again, Charlotte and Katie would have that as well if you happen to miss it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Lupe. Everyone give Lupe a round of applause. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. Now we have a time for questions. The first that Judith has, you mentioned the land size being prohibitive. What if there are deed restrictions that prevent subdividing or development?
So we do look at one thing that we pride ourselves at USDA. First off, we're not here to compete with your commercial lenders or banks or lenders. You should look at USDA rural development as your last source. You're unable to get any other credit elsewhere, unable to get your mortgage anywhere elsewhere. What we do in our office for rural development, we do look what we call as old time underwriting. We look on a case by case. If you don't have any credit, that's okay. We'll work with you, get us alternative credit. If you have collections, okay, tell us about it. So we want, when you call us, we kind of walk you through the process. Like I said, it is a process, but we have no problem, holding your hand, walking you through it. So that way, the whole goal is to be able to provide you with a home in that case scenario. The other guidelines, once we look at a case by case, we kind of walk you through and let you know what would not work. So I guess that's in a nutshell the best way I can answer that, just for the forum that we're in. Best thing we do is just to call in and we can elaborate on that question.
Thanks, Lupe. I actually have a question. How many people can apply together?
Okay, so good question. So the program itself is single family housing. So the applicants, you can have applicant 1, applicant 2. When you start going into, you can have co-applicants. But when you're looking like for communal or multiple families, then you're looking into multifamily housing, which eliminates the program. So it all depends, of course, every applicant that will apply, say, for example, you have 2 cousins, that's fine. They're not, or 3 cousins want to go in, that's fine. But when you start getting more into the 4 or 5, and especially if there's families, then that's when we get it. There's a fine line. Again, it's in a case by case. So it's a matter of call your office, talk them, telling your situation and the purpose. And then that way we can, let you know what would qualify or not.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Lupe, I have another one, I guess. So I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
With the buildings for agricultural purpose, what if there's just like a really beat up barn that really couldn't be used? I mean, what counts as
That would be fine.
functional? Yeah, okay.
That would be fine. The main thing that I wanted to point out in that little caveat was the as long as it's anything that is not income producing. If you can remember that, you'll be good. So if there's so many barns out in Alabama, proper rural areas that are, they're beautiful, they're, but they're not functioning as an income producing building, then that would be fine. Yeah, you wouldn't have to tear it down or anything like that.
Okay, cool.
I went ahead and put our Alabama website on the chat, as well as the map of the different areas for who you can contact in Alabama in the chat.
Can you give some examples of successful VAPGs, please?
Yes, so one that pops right to mind is bees with honey as an example. Or another one is like people that have goats and they turn their, milk or butter or whatever into soaps, or skincare or lotion, balm for your lips. So that, if that helps give you an idea of what that entails.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, y'all. Well, we're just going to give a big round of applause, but don't log off quite yet. We're going to take a picture. We always love a group picture, but big round of applause to Judith, Billy, and Guadalupe. Thank you so very much. Wonderful, wonderful. And first, before we take our photo, I just wanted to ask that question that I asked at the beginning. We didn't get to have as much discussion during this workshop. And so just wanted to see a show of hands of who would be interested in a workshop that was more discussion and conversation based around this topic. So you can just raise your hand or you can use the emoji. This is really helpful. Great. Cool. All right. So I'm seeing like half folks. Awesome. Seems like there would be a good turnout for a conversation. So that's really, really helpful. All right. Well, if everyone could please, if you feel so moved to come off of your camera being off and come on camera, please. That was a really roundabout way to say that. And we're going to take a group photo. All right. Getting my shift command 3 ready. All right. Everybody cheese. We're going to do a couple. Yeah. Nice. We look great. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks everybody for coming out. We're going to plug membership in the chat. So if you're not a member, please consider becoming a member. Thank you for coming and have a wonderful rest of your night.
Bye, y'all. Thanks, Billy.